Yeah, we'll just. Yes, my name is Rick, and this is Podcast for Life. And today, what we're going to be doing is welcoming Pastor Tyler Shields of First Baptist Church today. And what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about the Christian. And how to keep the government from turning evil. Okay. Brother Tyler.
I'm here.
Okay, great. Great. Why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself, who you
Yep, I'm the lead pastor at First Baptist Church in Barberville, Kentucky, and I'm actually fairly new here. Although I grew up in this area, we're new back. I only been here a couple months now, back home, and also serve as a chaplain in the Kentucky Army National Guard here in the state.
Okay, and you recently won an award for that service, did you not?
Yeah, I was able to, fortunately, nominated for the General Douglas MacArthur Leadership Award.
And that is a very prestigious award given to people who work above and beyond the call of duty. Okay, and Pat's been doing a lot of good First Baptist Church, but what we're all concerned with right now is the upcoming elections.
Yep.
Now, the thing is I believe that it is a Christian duty to examine and hold the feet to the fire in the political arena, to be able to communicate with our legislators and senators, and to have an active input into government.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you, Daniel. I think, one of the things that Christ tells us to do is to be salt and light. And if we're going to do that, that means we've got to be involved, in every part of our culture and society, and including government. And I think we've seen over recent decades, I think we've lost our saltiness in a sense that we've kind of hit our heads in the sand and haven't been involved as we should be.
Mhm. And as a result, somewhere along the way, I believe we've wrong fork in the wrong fork in the road, um, and gone down a path that God can work in, but might not be His best.
Right, right. And as Christians, we've got the opportunity every 2 and 4 years to correct that. You know, if we see our nation heading in a direction that we view as unbiblical, we've got the opportunity to make changes to that at the ballot box. And so that's why voting is so important for believers to be a part of. And I'm sure you want to talk more about that.
Oh yeah. What would you say is in the years the biggest problem as far as the political arena?
I think one of the biggest problems that I see from my role, um, I don't think enough Christians take it as serious as they should. I think far too many Christians tend to stay home or whatever. They don't vote as they should for whatever reason. You know, if all of the evangelical believers voted, there's not very many elections that couldn't be decided by that demographic. So it's important that Christians and cast a vote. I think another thing is that I've seen that is many Christians um, become tied to a party because it's the way that they grew up, or it's the way grandma and grandpa were part of this particular party. But as believers, we've got to take a really serious look, regardless of the party, at the platform. And in my opinion, there's a handful of issues that are the deciding factor for whom we should vote for. And you know, a lot of Christians aren't willing to have that hard discussion. But you know, things like pro-life, we've got to vote for pro-life candidates. I mean, there's just no other option. You can't call yourself a Christian and be supportive of abortion. Sorry, but that's the big one. You know, traditional marriage, biblical marriage. It's another issue. Christians have to support biblical marriage, hands down. So I think just being willing to have those hard discussions and admit when we've been wrong, and if that means changing parties, then that's what we've got to do.
Oh yeah. Okay, now one complaint I've heard over and over again over the years is we don't have anybody to choose from. And they're not giving us anybody that believes the way we do. Uh, so I'm just not going to go to the polls. What would you say to that?
Well, a vote not cast is a vote cast for the opposition, in my opinion. And there's no perfect candidate. There's not going to be what we consider a perfect candidate because there's no perfect people. However, there are candidates that largely, in every race, that largely uphold what we would value as Christians. And let's just take this particular election, for example, Daniel. You know, President Trump, perfect man. Neither am I, neither are you. But over the last 4 years, he's done a very good job at upholding the things that we as Christians should value. He's been very supportive of religious liberty. He's very, very supportive of life, the sanctity of life. You know, I think when you all other flaws set aside, that's to me that's a candidate that's worth voting for because of those issues.
Mhm. Oh, I agreed wholeheartedly on that. In fact, I met with President Trump back in 2008, and I shook his hand. I had a nice little conversation with him. So I believe I was at an advantage 4 years ago when I
Sure.
cast my vote for him. Well, now are seeing the difference between uh, President Trump and Vice President Biden, and I believe the people are starting to see what each of them stand for. And the thing is, his party doesn't matter. And the people that have listened to my podcast from the beginning, they know that I ran against Mitch McConnell in 2008, basically because I became dissatisfied with the job
Sure.
he was doing. Now, would you recommend that for
Yeah,
anybody else?
absolutely. I think just like any other calling, if a Christian feels obligated to affect change in our culture and society, that's a great realm to dive into. Put your name on the ballot, and if you're not satisfied just going and casting a vote, then get in there and try and get in office and affect real change that way. Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah. And then, like I said, yeah, Edmund Burke. The only way evil will win is if for good men to do nothing. So we need to get some good men into office,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah,
possible.
absolutely. I mean, as a Christian, you hear folks say they don't want to get involved in this and that, don't want to be involved in politics, or whatever, don't want to be involved in this. But if anybody in the world, anybody in our nation should be involved, it should be Christians. I mean, if we want to see the Christ's kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, we need to be involved and help shape that as much as we can.
So we can, but we got to put the effort in to make it happen.
Right.
Um, let's see. Okay. Oh yeah, I know a dramatic pause, but actually, I'm drawing a blank. I had so much stuff on my mind that I wanted to ask. It's like, um, I hate these days. Today I'm having an off day because I eat just about all week, and then I end up running late getting back. So I got to confess, I'm ill prepared.
Happens to the best of us.
Because generally I do have plenty of questions, plenty of comments. I'm sorry.
Said it happens to the best of us, man.
So what do you do about it when you get caught like that?
Well, unfortunately, I think God's given me a good ability to fly by the seat of my pants sometimes. Um, so you try your best to plan ahead, but sometimes you just got to roll with the punches, man. Do the best you can.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, God gives us all our talents, and it's up to us to use
Yep.
them and take advantage
Some
of them.
folks, like you were mentioning, some folks will be very talented in the political arena. Some folks are good speakers. They're good at connecting with people, and you know, for somebody out there, it may be time for them to use those gifts and those talents in that arena and try and have a good course correction for
Mhm.
our local governments or even our national government or state.
Yeah. And the thing is, it doesn't matter how old you are. It really doesn't matter how much money you have or how much money you can raise. It's just a matter of getting out there
Yeah,
and trying.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, people are amazed at how little I spent on my campaign against Mitch McConnell. He spent millions of dollars in advertising, and I think my whole budget was like $4,000. Um, Most of it was just getting out there, getting someplace. Uh, that was a big one for the impromptu speech, and when I would start speaking, it was generally at the courthouse, and by the time I got done, I'd have a couple of hundred people lined up, and then those couple of hundred people go and talk to other people. And next time I come to town, we have bigger crowd.
Right.
And when I ran against Mitch McConnell, I had a lot of fun, but I had a lot of challenges too. But it's all a matter of overcoming the challenges, whatever God gives us.
Yep. And I will say this about Senator McConnell. I think under the influence of President Trump over the past 2 and 3 years, he has really been an advocate for putting conservative judges in the courts. You know, I think that's something that Christians often overlook is, you know, that vote, you may not be a perfect candidate, but, you know, if you can cast a vote for a conservative politician at that level, they can do things like put conservative judges where they belong. And that in turn affects our nation through the court system for, you know, sometimes decades to come. And the relevance of that, I don't think can be overstated. Because that just has such a tremendous impact across the board on just about every level.
Yeah, and the thing is ever since 2008 when I ran against Mr. McConnell, I've been corresponding with him fairly regularly. You know, a lot of it's been from me to him, but it is amazing to realize that I send him an email and or I talk to one of his aides, and then I turn C-SPAN on there, and there he is arguing my case, you know, on the floor, and that when I that makes me feel good.
Sure.
And okay, so words of encouragement. Okay, where where in the Bible do we see where people have run for office, been elected to office, been appointed to office, and
Well, I got even a good example, Daniel, that we've been going through here lately as a church, and that's this fellow called Nehemiah. And we don't know the full backstory of Nehemiah, but he was a Jewish man born into captivity. And by some means of divine providence, he was able to be promoted to the position of cupbearer of the king of Persia, King Artaxerxes of Persia. Very prestigious position. I mean, it doesn't sound like it, but the cupbearer was close to the king, very influential, and had a place of dignity there. Through that position, Nehemiah was able to approach King Artaxerxes in regards to the situation in Jerusalem, some 1,000 miles or more away from the capital city of Susa. And he was given not only the king's blessing, but given provisions and a military escort to return to Jerusalem, given the decree to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And that's to me a good example of God's, one of God's people using the political position that they've been granted or appointed to impact their area, their people for the greater good and the greater cause. And of course, we'll get through the book. We learn that they were able to rebuild those city walls in a short 52 days, thanks to Nehemiah's leadership, and I think also the support and provisions made by the government of Persia.
No. In American history, we have the Revolutionary War. It was largely fought at New York City and what we now know to be Washington, D.C. Uh, and I recall a faithful story of George Washington on the side of the Potomac, and his soldiers were hungry, no shoes, and this is shortly before the crossing of the Potomac. Um, do you recall that story?
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay, go ahead, maybe. Perhaps you remember more of it than I
You're
do.
talking about when General Washington, President Washington, uh, prayed for the troops and really turned to God, deep dependence on God and God's providence, and um, really that's kind of a theme. If you study his life, he was always dependent on God's, especially God's sovereignty, God's providence, and God's provision throughout the war, throughout his life. And I think he's a great example of a believer that was able to, again, use their position to really make an impact, definitely for the good of our nation. And you've got others, all throughout our nation's history. I think Abraham Lincoln is another. We see a dependence on God, reliance on Him, and even into modern history, we've had several great leaders. And right now, if you notice, kind of behind the scenes in our current administration, there's a lot of influential people in our government, folks that are surrounding our president, even that are committed to prayer, committed to biblical truths and standards. And that, to me, that's pretty encouraging to see that taking place.
Mhm. So God does, and still works in
Absolutely.
all of our lives.
Absolutely.
And even though we choose our leaders among men, they are still uh, inspired of God if they choose to be.
Right. Right.
And if they don't choose to be, then we need to watch out for them.
Yeah.
Um, uh, the there is a lot of talk about censor, censorship and the what's being called the cancel culture. Um, what steps could we take to combat that and bring God back into the public square?
Well, I think as Christians, we simply just we have to do it. We've got to be vocal. We've got to be bold. No reason to be shy about our faith. Our faith is not a faith of hatred or bigotry. It's the most loving faith on on this planet. But we've gotten so afraid of being politically correct, of hurting people's feelings, whatever the case may be. And I think we've simply just got to stand up and be bold about our faith and our beliefs and be bold about what the Bible says and what God's standards are and not shy away from that. And then, whatever the consequences may be, we need to be ready to face them. And if that's ridicule or even persecution, just be willing to take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's one thing that we haven't had to worry too much about in the United States is real persecution. Um, in some countries, like Iran, it is actually a capital crime to be a Christian. Um, and then we have China and Japan and many of the Oriental countries. They really face persecution where they have churches being burned down, people being assaulted. Um, Pastor Tyler, what kind of stories have you heard about that? And maybe we can be encouraged by our good fortune being
Yeah.
Americans.
Well, there are religions that are much less tolerant than Christianity. Um, and there are, I would even go so far to say that certain forms of government might as well be a religion. And they're very intolerant to Christianity because of the values that Christianity promotes. So throughout the world, we've got bold brothers and sisters that are willing to not only lose material things, they're willing to lose their very lives for the sake of Christ. And here in the West, we're probably pretty weak, if we're going to be honest about it, because we've been so fortunate. We've not had to worry about those things. We don't have to worry about, tomorrow, Daniel, we're going to gather for church, and we don't have to worry about terrorists coming into our church. We don't have to worry about the government coming into our church and threatening us with beating us or killing us, burning our church to the ground. And so really the cost for us to be a follower of Christ is very minimal. And I think because of that, a lot of us are fairly weak in our faith. So the other flip side of that, we're very blessed. We're very blessed here in the United States, and we should be thankful that we have such a wonderful country to live in and to be able to practice our faith freely. But we need to continue to pray for our brothers and sisters around the world and promote American and Christian values around the world when we can, because, if we can see that type of religious liberty around the world, Christianity is going to flourish no matter where it is. I mean, some of the places right now where Christianity is growing the fastest is where the church is persecuted the most. But at the same time, we want to see our brothers and sisters do well. So we need to continue to pray for them and fight for them when we can.
Okay, and there are a lot of people out there that are taking a look at things, and they're sitting there thinking, okay, there's more to life than this. And they're nothing to believe in. And what we have is in John 3:16, we have for God so loved the world that he gave his only beloved son, that whomsoever, means anybody, shall believe, shall be given everlasting life.
Yep. It's that easy, Daniel. Folks are looking for something that's real. The gospel's real. God became a man. He lived a sinless life. He died on behalf of us, sinful people. And he not only died, but he was raised from the dead 3 days later, victoriously, overcoming sin and death, and now sits at the right hand of God. And if the Bible says if we just believe in him, if we'll have faith in him and believe that what he did in dying for us is enough for us to have reconciliation with God, then we can be saved. We can have everlasting life with God. And, for the Creator to come and redeem his own people, his own creation, just to have a relationship with him, that's something worth believing in. It's available to everybody.
Okay. And basically, who is welcome?
Everybody's welcome at our church, brother. We welcome anyone and everyone, just like John 3:16 says, whosoever, like the whosoever. So anybody.
Okay. Located.
So our church is located on 201 North Main Street, Barberville. Most folks will in the area know that's the church beside the pawn shop and the middle school. So we're right there off the Court Square. Big brick church, takes up half of a city block, so you can't really miss it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just about right next to the
Yep, close to
courthouse.
the courthouse.
Hmm. And what time are your
Sunday
services?
school starts at 9:30 a.m. and our Sunday morning worship starts at 10:45. And then we have uh, another service at 6 p.m. in the evening on Sunday, as well as all the kid activities at 6 p.m. as well.
Okay, and you also
We
have
do
a
a Wednesday
Wednesday night
night
Bible study.
study at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, as well as youth that same night.
Mm. Okay. And if anybody wishes to get a hold of the church,
The
what's the best
best
way to
way to
do
get a
that?
hold of the church is probably start at our website, which is fbcbarberville.com. There you can find all the information about the church calendar, other contact methods, and we're always available in the church office at 606-546-3636 all week long.
Okay. And how I like to end the podcast is by giving some encouragement to anybody that may be not feeling quite the best. So, why don't you go ahead and
All right,
start?
well, just always know that the Lord is with you. He never leaves us. He never forsakes us, no matter where we are or what we're going through. There's no place that you can run that is far enough to escape God's love. And there's nothing that you're going to go through that God's not already been there. Just like the fourth man was in the fiery furnace with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he's going to be right there with you today, whatever you're facing. And he's never more than a prayer away.
Okay. And 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 the thing is God is all about love, and so is my podcast to help you get through life, to help lift you up, to help you when you're down, to celebrate when we are all doing good. And the thing is when we all get to heaven, we will all be doing good. But until then, we can muddle through the best we can. But that doesn't mean that we have to settle for less than the best. So let's keep trying to grab the golden ring and keep loving each other and doing good for each other and being there for each other. For another week, I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching. And I also thank you for supporting the cast. And until next week, this is Daniel Essick, and this is Podcast for Life.